Welcome to another episode of FinTech Talks. I'm Sanjib Kalita, and I'm so excited to have our guest today, Rodger. Rodger, would you mind please introducing yourself?
Yes, Sanjib. I'm Rodger Desai, CEO of Prove Identity.
Wonderful. And can you talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for quite a long time, mostly trying to find new uses for the amazing things that our pockets call cell phones. At Prove, we use the cell phone as a way to authenticate transactions.
I think one commonality that we both have is that we're both former engineers. So we used to actually build things, like physical things or technical things, and made that transition. Can you talk a little bit about what you used to do as an engineer?
Yeah, well, my mother said I had to be either an engineer or a doctor, and I still don't know where my heart is exactly. So I married a doctor instead. Um, Engineering was it does teach you a really great way to think about problems and just maybe give you some raw capabilities that in a world that's increasingly technology driven, it gives you a kind of a solid foundation. I just didn't want to actually be an engineer, and so as soon as I could find my path out of that, I did.
When we first met, I describe it as sort of the early days of Prove, and obviously now you've taken that company quite a ways. Can you talk a little bit about the company and how you started and where you're at now?
Yeah, our original insight. So first of all, we didn't have any background in banking, fraud, risk. So we didn't come from kind of the traditional places that you know that try to like do KYC and those type of compliance processes. Instead, we came from a background of knowing how phones work, and I helped build some early phone companies. One was called Airtel in Spain, which is now Vodafone Spain, and I was always amazed at how amazing phones are. It's if you think about like the experience of using your phone, which we kind of take for granted, you can take your phone anywhere in the world and it immediately works. You don't have to like create an account where you go. And because you don't have to like assert who you are, like they don't ask you when you land in a new country, like, who are you and how do you want to pay for your calls? You can't actually lie and pose as someone else. And so we were fascinated by the fact that this is kind of one service that consumers use where there is like no trade-off between convenience, security, and even privacy. And if you think about it, most of these transactions when you're traveling are real-time cross-border transactions because the phone company you connect with in the country you visit effectively is a merchant and accepts potentially not, US dollars. So we're like, wow, it's amazing. There's already a system at scale that's PKI based that is convenient, secure, private, and does cross-border transactions all at the same time. And the web isn't like that. Everything on the web is, if you want things to be convenient, they may not be as secure as you'd want. And you're constantly fighting that trade-off between those factors. The phone kind of does it all. It does that mainly because it's really not about the phone. It's about the fact that there's cryptographic keys, like your SIM card. That's really the magic of authenticating keys versus verifying,
Mhm.
things that people say about themselves.
What did you specifically target?
Yeah. So the model we said is again we try to be inspired by regulators, but try to go beyond what they ask for. So today, just with simple process of opening a bank account, that process doesn't involve any authentication. It's basically a verification. So I could say I'm Sanjib, I live here. Here's my national ID, my date of birth, and you just have to make sure that data goes together in several authoritative places. Now that was designed at a time when it was considered really, really costly, if not impossible, to get Sanjib's name, address, social, date of birth. Like, where would you get such things? But now, because of all the breaches, it's pretty trivial and inexpensive to get those things. So it's very easy to pass KYC checks.
Mm,
In our model, we thought that verification and authentication should be unified.
mm,
So, for example, in our model, if you want to open a bank account, I can authenticate your phone, and it could actually just pre-fill that data on your behalf, your name, your address, etc., with your consent. But the way to think about that is the only way that I can pretend to be Sanjib and apply for the account in his name is if I have his phone in my hand during the transaction.
the-
So that makes the bar much higher. But at the same time, it's much more convenient
y-
because I'm not typing in anything.
mm,
So our notion of doing things was we created something called an identity token.
mm.
An identity token is basically a bind between your national ID and your phone, and it allows you to kind of just authenticate your phone and that asserts who you are. Now, of course, the ability to create these tokens is not trivial because it doesn't come from some source. And persisting that as people make changes, like people, obviously get new phones and change phone numbers and, uh, change their name if they get married, like all those things, you have to triage all these kind of life cycle events to maintain the accuracy of the token. But effectively, we think the world should be tokenized. And that way you get some of the benefits I mentioned earlier.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've grown Prove, that startup, from the startup days to, being where you are now, and how you might break that up?
Yeah, great question. So today, Prove has 19 of the top 20 US banks. We have about 2,000 banks overall. We do lots of sectors outside of banking. In fact, our non-banking business is bigger than our banking business now.
Mm.
But the early days was a lot of work kind of getting that product market fit. The approach we have is quite different. Back then, everyone thought the future of identity was scanning a passport or a driver's license and getting an OTP. But in our view, that was neither convenient or secure. And it's getting those first few wins, especially with large banks, was a calling card to the rest of the market.
The way you might need to support a large bank versus a marketplace, are there like major differences, or are the needs sort of similar?
You know, at one level, it's all the same. People want to know, is it really Sanjib behind the transaction?
Yeah.
Whether you're opening an account, sending a payment, or in social media, like making a post. There are vast differences, though. Banks really need to make sure they can explain their decisions.
Mhm.
For fair lending laws and other compliance measures that they have to adhere to. Whereas folks that aren't under those same obligations, they just want an answer.
Mm.
So in some cases, we have to give a lot of data to help them make a not just an accurate decision, but to explain their decision.
Yeah.
For non-banks, they're really, more about the outcome. And we kind of separate the world between builders and operators.
Mm.
So banks to us are builders where we help them with the outcomes. Operators want us to own the outcome.
One of the areas that, this is obviously a hot topic right now, and probably where the industry is going. You're thinking about like agentic commerce, and AI, yeah, obviously AI and bots and things like that. Like, working in identity, it seems like it is very much like, you got to keep ahead of the fraudsters and the bad actors, and like, so how are you doing that with Prove now?
Another great question. I think we're such at an interesting time in life and industry of just the future that awaits us with AI. And obviously,
Mm.
it's kind of an opportunity and a threat, of course. Obviously, the attack surface is great, much more exposed because of AI, and the cost of doing large scale attacks has dropped so much that there's just going to be a lot more attacks. In fact, we're seeing the amount of bots that proliferate the web in the digital economy is growing at a phenomenal rate. And these days, these bots aren't the traditional ones where they're in some AWS cluster somewhere. Now, it's not unusual for a fraud ring to buy 2 million IoT eSIMs, provision them over the air, and create fake accounts, create SMS pumping schemes, and all the scams that consumers are led into. They can do that at an amazing cost profile. Some of these IoT SIMs cost pennies a month. So imagine a million of them, 2 million, 10 million create fake accounts and creating the havoc they do. At the same time, bots are, potentially good because maybe you told in an LLM to go buy these golf clubs if they hit a certain price point, and
Mm.
and that essential bot is doing that on your behalf, and maybe it tries to execute the contract at 3 in the morning when you're sleeping, when it hits a certain price point. So now you have a world of humans, but increasingly bots that some are very malicious and some are just acting on your behalf.
Mm.
So to delineate all those things is quite important, and that's something Prove has spent several years developing capabilities for. One thing that is notable is that we have so much insight into the tenure of your relationship with your phone and your authentication keys that most of these agents don't have that tenure and behavioral activity.
Mm.
So if I'm a bad guy with a million eSIMs that do bad things, well, there's still the phone I call my mother with,
Mm.
and that's going to have the rich tenure activity that we see in our system. So it's really kind of a network view,
Mm.
uh, and that allows us to delineate, human versus bot, and then good bot versus bad bot.
That's I I'd imagine that, like, sort of being on the inside, if you will, of observing the bad bots, like, it must do you feel worried at all, like, when you personally shop or use your bank, apps and things like that?
Well, I think as Americans, we've grown accustomed to that if something bad happens, our bank covers us. So
Yeah,
I guess that makes us all sleep well at night.
yeah.
But there are some new threats. I think Americans have never looked at data privacy more seriously than today,
Mm,
with lots of concerns around surveillance.
you know,
So I think that I probably worry about that more than I worry about my bank account being siphoned out. Um, but I think these are the new challenges that await us.
oh, that's a lot to think about, and, I wanted to ask you about your fintech meetup experience and, what was that like? And, what did you get out of it?
Well, I remember when FintechTalks Meetup was conceived, I think during COVID, and the idea was so brilliant that and the idea for a lot of the things that the founders have done, and even in other conferences, is it's really just about the people, right? Ultimately, it's about this is an industry full of people. People like to do business with people they know, that they like, that they can trust. And that's obviously very hard to do during COVID when we couldn't see each other physically. So it's an amazing event because you get to connect and reconnect and build bridges into new relationships based on existing ones. And that's what drives business. I
Mm,
think if you look at like how business gets done, it gets done with people you trust
mm,
and those sometimes those relationships are built over decades.
mm.
So it's an amazing place for us to get together, reconnect with those we know, and build bridges into new groups of people to continue expanding our business and our partnerships.
And any advice you might give to, let's say, either, a startup founder trying to build their business and attending fintech meetup, or even a bank trying to, understand what's the new lay of the land?
Um, Probably one is show, don't tell. Like if you're a startup founder and you want, and look, we all want to meet the latest and greatest things that are coming out. I think OpenClaw showed us that things can happen in a matter of days and take over the world. But demos are amazing, and that really helped prove in the early days. I wouldn't show a PowerPoint presentation,
Mm,
and I wouldn't talk. I would just show them a demo, and I think that really is important to articulate,
yeah.
your vision, and that can be whether it's a big bank trying to do new things or a startup trying to break into a big bank.
Looking ahead at, and I'm actually glad that we're on video, because if I ask this next question, you might like try to hit me or slap me. But when we first met, you were an upstart, but you are. I describe it as you're part of the uh you're part of the mainstream at this point. Is that a fair statement, or would you disagree with that?
For sure, I think that we get past product market fit, and you get, eventually want to get to the point where like you're profitable, we're profitable, we've been profitable for quite some time. Then you want to be global, we're global. Some of the brands that we work with that are well known, we are working with them in 60 countries, going on 80 countries. Then ultimately it becomes, can you have that kind of durability? Every industry, every company gets commoditized if you don't continue to have a North Star of where you put your value.
Mm,
To us, that North Star has always been around, that Rubik's Cube
right.
of incredible accuracy, incredible coverage, and incredible price point.
Mm,
There's one mentor that his line was, "You have to be able to do things in milliseconds for millicents." And as you look at the market opportunity for identity, it's not just the most important things we think of, which is like opening a bank account, making a payment, but it gets into things like signing transactions. It gets into things like tokenized assets.
mm,
Where today, Uber and Airbnb showed us that there's all this, supply hidden, in that just wasn't exposed to the market. You can imagine there's like someone in Vietnam may want to buy 1/100th of my mother's house in Jersey, and those types of things as assets get tokenized even beyond payments, like
mm,
there's gonna be a tremendous need for identity. So I think that um, in one sense, we've come a long way, and I think we're quite well known among the banks and fintechs and gaming companies and digital marketplaces. But identity has to be something that's core infrastructure,
mm.
and that's what we intend to be. And that's for transactions we haven't even thought of yet, companies that don't even exist yet, as the global marketplace becomes truly borderless.
Well, that's amazing, and once again, thank you for joining us today, and I'm glad that we've been friends for so many years, and look forward to meeting up again soon in life, in person.
Yeah. All right, Sanjeev, this was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roger.